Hello, everyone, and welcome to Colorful Pixels, the show where I talk with the people behind the pixels. I'm your host, Carmen Askerneese, and today I am joined by Matt Owens. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Carmen. How's it going?
Is going pretty well. Matt is one of my absolute favorite people, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. So I think what I want to start off by talking about is, can you describe a bit of who you are and what you do now? And then we'd love to talk about your journey and the inspiration for you getting into games in the first place.
Sure, absolutely. To kick things off, I am a senior game designer over at Firaxis Games. I've been working on the Civilization 7 game for about 2 years now. We just launched last month, so been busy, but a lot of exciting stuff going on. Working on some future-facing stuff for that project, and yeah, been loving it there for, like I said, past couple of years now. Before that,
That's
I was
amazing.
working for EA, mostly on their sports titles, stuff like Madden and NBA Live, as you can see my shrine to vanity back here.
It's all good. I think we all have them of just like keeping track of all the things we've done over the years. Um,
Yep.
well, I'm a big fan of yours and especially the games that you're working on, but can you talk a little bit about when you were growing up? Were games a big part of your life, or how did you first find your love for games?
Yeah, I was fortunate that I was raised by some parents who were pretty nerdy themselves. Game consoles back from the one of the Ataris to the NES was the first system that I really remember playing with. By playing with, that's a bit of a stretch because it was definitely like my brother playing and then a disconnected other controller being handed to me so that I felt like I was involved, but still having a blast. And it's probably around the Super Nintendo era that I felt like I was, well, old enough and capable enough with fine motor skills to actually like start properly gaming. So that's where a lot of my biggest memories, stuff like Super Mario World and Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI and all those games come from. And it's been a huge part of my life. It's been the media that I probably consumed the most of throughout my entire life, at least a little bit each day. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, what should I do with my life? And so I decided to do nothing with video games and I'm a lawyer instead. Thankfully, once I became an attorney, I realized that I wanted to weave video games back in my life in some fashion. And then went on an interesting journey to become a game designer instead.
Dang, I feel like the disconnected controller. Every person who was a kid in the '90s, I feel like experienced that a little bit.
100%, man. Classic.
Do you remember like what was the first game that you remember like that felt like your game, or like the one that you remember playing first?
Gosh. This is definitely like some kind of bias just for how important that game was to me and playing it with my brother and even my mom. I remember us playing through a full run of the original Super Mario Brothers for the NES. And it sticks out to me because it was just one of those things where I remember so vividly running through each one of the worlds and learning where all the different warp pipes are, trying to do like speedrunning before speedrunning was really a thing with that game to see how fast I could get through it, coming back to it over and over again. Really just forms a crystal clear picture in my head whenever I think back to those times. So that was the first one that felt like it was very close to the first game that I really played through properly and beat on my own, or at least in cooperation with other people. And then a lot of other stuff sort of hits similar beats. I remember the first like long RPG that I played. Like I already mentioned, Chrono Trigger is one of my favorites of all time. I still have memorabilia for that game hanging around here, and still probably in my top three, if not higher, at this point in time.
Dang, man. Okay, I feel like I remember playing the original. Well, I don't know if it was the original, but like Mario Bros. That was out when we were kids,
Yeah.
and I don't think I ever beat the first few levels. Like, I remember talking to people at school and then being like, "Oh, such and such about Bowser," and I'm like, "Who's that?" Like, those
Who's
other
that guy?
characters in this game.
That's awesome. No, it's a tough game. Like back in the day, that is how you got playtime out of those games. It was just like it was freaking hard, especially as a little kid,
Yeah.
trying to get by that stuff. But was definitely really rewarding to get through. I feel like there's elements of that kind of vibe that have resurfaced recently with challenging but relatively fair games, stuff like Dark Souls and Elden Ring popping off. But yeah, something about that play style was a lot of fun. Itched the right parts of the brain.
Yeah. Do you think that like you mentioned Chrono Trigger is one of your favorite RPGs of all time? Do you think that was sort of the catalyst for a desire to like do game narrative or like an passion for game narrative?
Gosh, I would lay some of the blame at Chrono Trigger's feet for sure. I'm trying to think of what other games are really sort of pivotal to my perception of games and narrative and their capacity for storytelling. Chrono Trigger was definitely big because spoilers for a game that is 30 years old at this point. God.
Mhm.
But there's a moment in time where the main character of the game, the eponymous Chrono, sacrifices himself. Is literally like wiped
He
in
dies?
a Dragon Ball Z blast style from the face of this earth to ashes to protect his teammates and make sure that they get out alive. And I remember being moved by that. And that was really the first moment in time where it's just like, I'm not just having fun, I'm like reacting to something that is happening in this world and how wild that feels. To still remember that so vivid, I'm literally getting like chills just thinking about that experiencing that moment for the first time. Because looking back on it, it isn't any great sort of work of narrative by today's standards, but at that point in time, I can't think of a game that let their main character die. It was such a twist, right? Like it was such an unexpected beat that is still really, really important to me today. I think there are a few other games that sort of stand out to me in a similar capacity. I remember reacting really strongly to some of the ending sequences for Metal Gear Solid 3. That actually is coming out with like a remake right now. So I'm not going to spoil the ending for that for people in case they're experiencing it for the first time. But really, really moving stuff because of the agency it not only gave you, but the agency it required. Um, for the final sequence, it prompts you to make this very pivotal move, and you have to push a button to make it happen. And the the gravitas that added that it is my actions that are causing this was something that again just really really sticks in my mind as something that only video games can do in terms of their narrative, allowing you to experience sort of firsthand these actions and their consequences that you are literally playing a hand in this is something that still speaks to me to this day.
Dang. I haven't played Chrono Trigger, but through osmosis, I've learned the story of it. And I remember I had a similar experience with a different game. I think it was called Legend of Dragoon. Just like one of the it's like the beginning of the game, but like you're kind of in this village and it has a really long setup, but you get to know these people in this village and then your village gets burned in this tree that like everybody kind of had some kind of connection to spiritually or otherwise gets burnt and it like kind of lingers on that for a moment. I remember being really sad, like, oh man, that was my hometown. And so yeah, I know what you mean about those powerful moments in games and like you said, I think that is more commonplace now, but I think it's because people our age are making games now and we all grew up with those games that kind of set that precedent, which is it's cool
Absolutely.
in a way because it's like we're learning from the things that helped us form these connections when we were kids. And Metal Gear 3, that's Snake Eater, right?
Snake Eater, that's it.
I remember playing that. I rented it from Blockbuster, and I think
Yeah.
the opening cutscene was like 45 minutes or something.
Kojima is a madman and a genius. He is right at that straddle on that line. But yeah, that was wild. It's so interesting because he's so infamous for those like 2 hour long cutscenes in the middle of the game that I remember having so much respect for him for allowing me to have that moment that I'm talking about at the end, rather than just letting it play out in a cutscene. He clearly understands the power of that. Just also likes to direct movies basically in between making his game. So
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that makes that moment even more impactful that it was an intentional choice by the creators that they wanted the player to have agency. And is it one of those moments where it's like, if you choose to not do anything, will the game proceed, or is it like you have to do this?
Yeah, you basically have to do it for the game to
Oh,
proceed. And I know that some games, at least today, get some flack for that. But back then, the way that I rationalized it was like, I could just not do it. I could just turn off the game and say, like, I'm not going to follow through with this, but I want to see what happens. I want to see what the ramifications of my actions are. So it's still powerful to me in that regard.
yeah, no, I like that a lot. I mean, I think I'm definitely in the camp of people sort of having and not or of like I like games that have more of an author narrative where we have a moment like that where it's like this makes sense for the story. This is what you're experiencing as this character, but you still have agency to make this choice and do this action in the moment. And also I think other games that are more like open where you can kind of construct your own, well, you have branching paths and you can kind of choose which path you want to take. I feel like both of those things are great experiences, and I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it should be this way, it should be that way," but I like that there's variety and there's options for people to make the kind of story they want to make.
Absolutely. I think it's really fascinating where that kind of even the meta narrative around that is kind of being explored in really interesting ways. I think nowadays, if you can't tell by my literal Sans themed hoodie, I'm a big fan of Undertale, and the creator Toby Fox was very intentional with his kind of first entry, Undertale, being something where you have a very clear choice of whether or not you're going to be a horrible person and kill everybody, or you're going to try to do things the nice way and not have to hurt anybody. And there's some very, very different outcomes that come as a result of whether you choose one path or the other. And that was such an important part of the narrative, your ability to choose and the ramifications of your choices, that what he's exploring in the pseudo sequel Deltarune right now is really fascinating because very clearly early on it establishes um, and it tried to defy your expectations in terms of what you expected if you're coming from the previous game, in the terms of your choices don't matter. You are on this path. And you can do little things that will change the outcomes of certain things ever so slightly, but it's very much in the background. It's very much hidden. It's not kind of this main path that you're meant to go down. It's almost like you were breaking the game and its
Mm.
intentions when you are going down these other paths. I think that's fascinating. I love stuff like that, man.
Yeah, Toby's a powerful storyteller, and I'm glad you brought it up. I was gonna bring up Undertale at some point
I
because
knew
my
it.
boy Matt loves Undertale, and um, I wanted to ask you, like, man, was it it's over a decade now or something like that, or maybe longer since that game came out? And
20,
I think that
2015, so almost exactly a decade.
yeah, such a long time now, and I think the choice of being a doing the pacifist or the violent run uh is something that's really well known, but at the time it was like you didn't really know as you were playing the game, but the characters would respond to you if you were violent. And so it kind of gives you
Yeah.
that moment of like, are you sure? And I thought they did it in a really organic way, which was really interesting because it takes that classic combat mechanic that you see in RPGs where the expectation is like, well, I'm just gonna if I run into somebody and they're not a quest giver, I'm just gonna have to kill everything I see. And it puts the onus back on you of like, you don't have to. You're making a choice to do this. And I thought that was a really clever design choice. Like what are some of the other things that were really compelling to you about Undertale? And like how did that affect you when you first played it? Do you remember?
So much. God, I'm such an Undertale fanboy. It's embarrassing, honestly. But yeah, I think that so much of what was done in that game contributed to the core message it was trying to deliver in such a fantastic way. There's such a focus on characters that literally, even in the fights, right? Every single one of the attacks feels like it is an extension of who that character is and what they stand for and what their emotional state is. To the point where, like, you can taunt them and get them upset, and the nature of their attacks will change in response to the kind of things that you're saying or the promptings that you're having. Or you can, like, eat a slice of pie that you've saved from this one character's ex-wife way later in the game, even though you get the slice way earlier on, and it like makes him sad, and so his attack decreases. And it's just like little things like that. That all sort of contribute to this core message that the game is trying to send, this story it's trying to tell. It all sings in such perfect harmony that I'm blown away by it. Even going back to it today, almost 10 years later. Um, so yeah, the combat system, of course, the music. I mean, Toby is really a musician first and foremost. He is able to tie the melodies, the like motifs, and every single note feels like it is really hitting the emotional tenor that he wants you to feel at that point in time. Um, I think most games that I really rank very highly on my favorites list have a clear understanding of the importance of music and sound design as it relates to telling their stories and making sure that those really key moments are reinforced, that you understand the world and the characters by the music that's associated with them. It's such an important piece that is, I think, easy to overlook, but so critical to making a really great and memorable game.
Hell yeah, dude. I was at an arcade the other day and there was uh like a DDR type game. It wasn't DDR itself, but um it, it was one of the Japanese ones and it had the Undertale soundtrack in there. And I was like, how
Yes.
cool must that be for him to like see his music in games like that? I think that'd be so sick. So
That's
I
awesome.
would love that soundtrack too.
So good, man. Like it's something you could listen to even if I don't think you play the game. Obviously, it's pretty sick when you think of the cool moments they're associated with. But I know people who have just listened to it like it's a freaking bop.
Yeah.
Like you can't help but kind of jam to it.
Hell yeah, dude. Do you now okay, this is probably the hardest question I've asked you so far. Do you have a favorite character from the game?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I know. Keep it
It's
serious on this podcast.
uh they Toby did such a good job with so many characters from uh that game that it is really tough to pick one that stands out above the others. I mean, like I said, obviously, I'm wearing literally Sans' hoodie. Sans is, I think, sort of the poster child for Undertale in a lot of different ways now. Clearly a fan favorite. Sticks in my mind very clearly for a few different reasons that I won't go too deep into for the spoiler's sake. But yeah, a really powerful character for sure. Beyond that, I'm a I'm a big fan of Undine, who is just the wildest but best meaning person that you will ever encounter in the underground. She is uh, impossible to forget once you encounter her, I think. And the way that she continues to contribute to the story, I think, is really fun.
Hell yeah, Undyne is awesome. I remember the first time I encountered that character, I was just like, "What the heck?" And she's such a layered character, and you learn so much about
Yeah.
her story and how she contributes to it. And also, I think it takes a lot of tropes from RPGs and other stories and gives those more layers and depth. And so I really like what they did with that particular character.
Yeah, it's this great time for games that I don't know if Toby sort of ushered it in, but he certainly, I think, put a fine microscopic lens over it, where we're almost in this postmodern era of RPGs and games generally, where we have such an intrinsic knowledge of so many of these tropes and sort of stereotypes that you see within games that subverting them in weird and unusual ways is kind of the new state of being for a lot of these titles that are coming out, and I love it because it is such a fun thing to see sort of these weird expectations that you built around, even sort of the core premise of what Undertale is about, where it's just like, hey, if you're an RPG hero in pretty much any other game, you're a mass murderer. How does that actually work? If we take a second to like back up and really think about it, that doesn't seem okay. So let's unpack that a little bit. Uh, Great stuff. Yeah, it's really, really good stuff.
It's so good. I feel like also back in the time when it came out, there weren't really many popular cozy games at the time. I mean, they existed. It's Stardew Valley and all that stuff, but it was definitely, I think it was a time where people were like, "Oh, folks are open to games that aren't just about violence," and so I thought that was
Yeah,
an exciting change that happened.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that it was sort of a long time coming. Obviously, the Hearthstone games are always extant, and Animal Crossing kind of continues to have a huge presence in sort of the zeitgeist of everybody's mind of cozy games. But yeah, stuff like Stardew Valley certainly, I think, broke open the floodgates. And we're just like, well, if we could just go and like do low stress, fake stress chores and feel really good about completing things around the farm that I don't own, that feels nice. That's really comforting in a weird sort of way. And yeah, that's another trend that I've really enjoyed following along with. And now, like the weird sort of meta commentary on that, where I've seen some games sort of try to have like that cozy game veneer, but then it's actually surreal horror, sort of just a step behind the looking glass. And I'm here for it, man. So
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the indie games that Blumhouse was helping to produce. I don't remember the
oh,
name of
nice.
it, but I did see that, and I was like, I kind of want to play that game.
The one game that I'm thinking of specifically is called, I think, Little Bitty Two Shoes, something like that. But yeah, I think there's a few that have kind of been in that vein now.
Oh dang, okay. Yeah, horror games for me are really like it depends because I'm like, man, I feel like I love horror films, but a horror game just hits different. So I'm like, oh, it depends. I don't know.
It's tough, man. It's really tough. I watch a lot more horror games than I consume myself, just because it's easier to be brave when you have kind of somebody else taking the brunt for you.
Yeah,
But every so often, I'll jump in and try to be a brave old boy myself, and sometimes literally scream out loud as a grown man in his 30s by himself.
it's scary, man. I did want to kind of go back a little bit to something that you mentioned that I think maybe there's people listening who might have a similar experience or be curious about. So you decided to go down the career path of being an attorney, and then you made a career change later in life. Well, not you're not late in your 20s. You made a career change. What was sort of the decision for you? Like how did you decide upon that, and how did you, I guess, bring yourself to make such a big life decision?
It's tough. It feels crazy even in retrospect, looking back at it and trying to sort of re-examine that period of my life. But I think, you know, without getting too in detail, a lot of it was honestly trying to have a sense of self-preservation. I decided I wanted to be an attorney sometime when I was in high school. I think I was like, all right, well, let's take a look at my skill set. I can string a few sentences together. I, have some good critical thinking skills. I think that I'd be good at it. So let's just do that. And so for the next 7 years of my life, that one, 5 minute conversation I had with myself at 17 years old directed the course of my future, which is exactly how you want to go about things. Um, and I once I had sort of been set on that path, it felt like I could not break away from it, even though there were hesitations where I'm like, is this really what I'm going to do? Is this really going to make me happy? Is this really fulfilling to me at the end of the day? I was like, well, once I get into it, maybe it'll be fine. So once I got into it and was a practicing attorney for about 2 years after passing the bar, I was like, man, this is not it, huh? This something's got to change. Otherwise, this isn't going to be a long term plan for a number of reasons. And at first, I was like, video games have been such a big and important part of my life. Even just surviving through law school and into this chapter of my existence, that clearly I need to give that a bit more thought of how I want to really honor that part of myself and my personality and the things that I enjoy. So early thinking was, okay, hey, maybe I could practice law in a field that's more closely tied to video games and the interactive entertainment industry in general. Thinking through the process of how I would make that shift happen was like, well, if I knew how to make video games, I feel like I'd be able to serve my clients a lot better because I would really understand what their needs are and I would be able to speak the same language that they have. that led to me applying to go back to school, getting accepted into the Florida Interactive Entertainment Academy, where I met some cool people, like a guy named Carmen Askerneese. But as soon as I jumped into that program, and as soon as I started to make games, it was a light switch moment. It was a I'm never gonna go back to practicing live. This is an option on the table because it was so much more rewarding at the end of the day. It was so much more fulfilling. It felt right in a way that very little else in my life had felt like previous to that point. And so I went all in, and thankfully it worked out for me. Certainly whenever I try to give advice to people about like, hey, is that what you would recommend? I'd be like, it's a gamble. It's a tough call to make because it worked out for me, but I know a lot of other people in my situation that tried a very similar route and are just as talented as me, if not more so, and has not worked out in quite the same way for them. So, you know, I encourage people to, if it is an act of my life is not where I need it to be, I need to explore something different. Yeah, definitely go for it, but just be aware it takes everything, and there are no guarantees even once you've given all that you have. So, if you're willing to take that gamble, I thankfully, didn't have a family. I didn't have anybody depending on me. I could kind of take that risk and not worry too much about the fallout. But there's a lot of factors to consider. And I'm really thankful every single day that it's worked out as well as it has for me. I continue to try to work hard in order to make sure that it stays my reality. But yeah, a lot of cards falling just right to get me where I am today.
That's really powerful, and thank you for sharing that. I also want to say that when Matt and I first started in the AAA space, it was different in terms of just the stability of the industry. Then, well, I mean, it's always kind of like Matt's saying, it's not guaranteed, and it's always sort of dependent on your situation and where you are and the job market, but it was very different than it is now. And I think nowadays, like there are a lot of studios that are closing. There's a lot of layoffs. It's a lot more unstable, and that's part of the reason why I'm making this show is that it's important to see the people who are making these games. It's important to remember that even though there are bad things happening in the industry, we hear about hundreds, thousands of layoffs. These are all real people, and to not get lost in the data, and to remember that there are people behind these numbers and people behind the pixels who are making these games. And so, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's a really inspiring and powerful story. And like you said, there are a lot of folks out there whose story is different, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth chasing your dreams.
Absolutely.
Well, we're gonna start to wrap things up, but Matt, I'm so happy that you could be here today and we could talk. I always love talking with you, my friend. Before we fully close things out, though, is there any last thoughts you want to leave people with, and where can people find you if they want to follow you or learn more about you and your journey?
Sure. Let's see. I made a conscious choice to stay away from a lot of social media, which is, I think, a valuable move for me personally, at least. But if you do want to reach out, always feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll usually check up on that every now and then and catch up with people just sort of around the industry. In terms of last thoughts to leave people with, I would imagine that a lot of people in this situation who are going to be listening to this program either already in the industry or very close to wanting to be in the industry. So, words of encouragement, I think. Just I know that it has been pretty bleak for a little while, like you kind of just mentioned. And I hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel that we're going to reach soon. Um, there's still so much life left in this industry. There's still so much for us to explore. And I think we have tools at our disposal now to make what we can imagine a reality in really amazing ways. So I hope that as crushing as it can be, sort of the message I want to leave people with is it is worth continuing to fight, and because it is going to get better. This too shall pass. I sure hope, even though it seems like it's been lasting a while. So Yeah, I'm looking forward to slightly better days, but continuing to fight the good fight for now.
Thank you, Matt. I think that's really powerful, and leaning on community, having each other, supporting one another is definitely going to help us. Thank you all so much for listening. I've been your host, Carmen Askerneese. You can find me online at C Askerneese, or excuse me, at Carmen Askerneese. I changed that recently on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. And you can also find me on Substack at The Save Point. I'd love for you to join the colorful community. If you're watching on a video platform, be sure to like and subscribe for more episodes like this. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave a review. It really helps the show grow and helps it reach other people. And tell me what you thought and who you'd like to see as a future guest on socials and in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.